My name is Crystal Zuniga, and I'm a registered dietitian and assistant professor of oncology at the Live Strong Cancer Institute in Austin, Texas. Thank you for joining me today on my presentation on nutrition facts versus nutrition marketing. So I hope you brought today a packaged food that has a label on that, because I want you to be able to go through this as we go through this presentation today. And what today's presentation is on is not only what's on a food label from that nutrition facts panel, but what are some of the terms used in that front of package? What do they mean? How are they regulated? And how can you use this information to make good food choices for you and your family? I often get asked, like, is this good for me? What about this product? What about this product? And I can't possibly give my opinion on every single product, but I think helping people understand interpreting that nutrition facts panel, as well as what some common deceiving terms might be on that front of package, can help people feel more empowered that they're making a choice that's good for them. So what I'll be going over is what's on a food label, popular terms and claims. I have some examples of tricky food marketing, and then just briefly summarizing some food for thought here. So interpreting the food labels, starting off with just some fun facts about the history of nutrition labeling. It actually wasn't until 1990, when the Nutrition Labeling and Education Act was passed, that they required the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, required nutrition information on all packaged food. And so it mandated that all food companies were required to make consistent claims and included detailed, standardized nutrition facts panels on all products. So that would help the consumer make some decisions between different food products if they had the same information listed on there. It wasn't until 1994 that that first standardized nutrition facts label was put on a product. And then nothing else was modified until 2006, when food companies had to add amount of trans fat. Then again, not until a decade later was it passed to update that nutrition facts panel. And not until 2020 was that actually rolled out. So you might have noticed that the nutrition facts panel has a different look, and it has some different information on there. And so I'll be going over some of that today. Some of the differences you might not have noticed, because it has been pretty minimal, but it is meant to be more helpful for the consumer. So the history of the nutrition facts panel is pretty young, again, not until the 1990s, and it hadn't really been updated in a while. So the 2020 labels out are a big change. And one of the big changes I'd like for you to bring, we can start going over, is bringing out your nutrition facts panel here. Okay, I have a box of cereal. I'll be looking to the side to kind of go through this with you. So, excuse me, the first thing on the nutrition facts panel, and it's sometimes on the side or the back of the box. Usually they put it in like the smallest place possible, because they want to have all the fancy coloring and all that stuff to grab the consumer's attention. But the nutrition facts panel is required to be there on your product. And the first thing that is on there is how many servings are in that container. So in a bag of chips, you can't assume that one bag of chips is one serving. You need to look at how many servings are per container. And then underneath that, bolded, is what is that serving size. That was something that was recently updated, and the nutrition facts panel is that the serving size is now based on how much someone typically consumes per time. This is not the recommendation for how much of that product you should consume. So for example, in ice cream, a recommended serving size is half a cup of ice cream, but what's on the nutrition facts panel for ice cream is 2/3 of a cup, because that is the serving size most people are consuming. So again, that serving size is not a recommended intake amount. That is just how much most people are normally consuming. And so the nutrition information below is all for one serving of that product. So if you're going to be eating multiple servings of that product, you'll need to do some math, for example, doubling the amount if you're having 2 servings. Then listed below that, this is all the information that's required to be on a nutrition facts panel is going to be calories, big and bolded, total fat, cholesterol, sodium, carbohydrates. Underneath carbohydrates will be fiber, sugar, and added sugar. Added sugar is a new one, and protein. And then the minerals that are required to be on there, vitamins and minerals, are vitamin D, calcium, iron, and potassium. And that was a recent update as well. Now back up to the top, total fat will always be on top. It's saying how much total fat is in there and then what types of fat make up that total fat. So saturated, trans, polyunsaturated, and monounsaturated. Then there's cholesterol and sodium. And so that top list are things that you should try to limit in your diet. Underneath carbohydrate will be the types of carbohydrate, of fiber, and sugar. Now to delineate the different types of sugar is now they've added on the label how much of that sugar is added sugar, meaning that it's not naturally present in that particular food. So if it was fruit juice, that would not say added sugar because that juice is made up of fruit which has natural sugar. But for example, in cranberry juice, where they usually add sugar to make it not taste so tart, you might see how many grams of added sugar is in that ingredient. And that is something, in that food, and added sugar is something that we should be trying to limit. Now the percent daily value, without getting too much into what that means, this can be really helpful in delineating whether that food is high or low in that particular nutrient. So if that percent daily value is high, for example, in my product here, it has 28% of percent daily value for added sugar, means that this product is really high in added sugar. This is based on a percent daily value is based on a 2,000 calorie diet, which is not going to be a one size fits all. So it's really, I think this is more of comparing and seeing if something is high or low in a particular nutrient. Okay, so all labels must have serving, how many servings are in there, serving size, calories, fat, cholesterol, sodium, carbohydrate, fiber, added sugar, protein, vitamin D, calcium, iron, and potassium. Now, if that food is adding any particular nutrient and putting that on the label that is fortified in vitamin D, well, that is required, but if it's fortified in any other nutrient, they will have to list that on the label, or if it's enriched, meaning other nutrients were added, that has to be listed on the label so you see how much is in there. Okay. Now underneath the nutrition facts panel with all the nutrition information is the ingredients list. Now in the ingredients, it's going to be listed in descending order by weight. So the ingredient that weighs the most is listed first. This is really helpful because if you see that something that has sugar in it or just straight up sugar is listed on the label at the very top, you know that that product has a lot of sugar. So it's important to look at that ingredients list to see how much of that actual ingredient is in there. An example is there are also some products now called like veggie chips or veggie snacks, and have a picture of vegetables in the front of the label. And then you look at the ingredients list and you might see like corn or potato. And then very far down on the list, there might be some spinach powder or beet powder. So those vegetables were actually not a huge contributor to that overall package, the product. Okay, so that ingredients list can also give you some information about what is in your product and how much of particular ingredients are in there. Then what will be bolded is if it has any of the 8 major allergens. This is helpful for people that have an allergy, like these 8 major allergens make up 90% of the allergies people have, because sometimes these ingredients can be hard to decipher. Like, is that a dairy product, or does that have nuts in it? So someone who has a allergy, this is going to be really helpful to clearly delineate if that product has that allergen in there. It doesn't mean it's dangerous for you. It means it's dangerous for someone who has that allergy. And so that is listed and bolded in the nutrition facts panel. And so some of the big updates on the panel is that calories is big and bolded, added sugar is on there, change in the nutrients that were required to be on the label, as well as there's a new footnote about % daily value as well. So pay attention to that. That is updated, and really get familiar with looking at this panel, because this is going to give you the most information. This is tightly regulated by the FDA about how much is in there, what needs to be listed on that label. And this will be helpful when you're comparing different products, because as I'll get into a little bit later, is that the food marketing terms on the front of package might be a little deceiving and not give you the true story of the nutrition content of your product. Okay, another thing that is listed by and regulated, by the FDA are food label claims. And there are several food label claims. One of them is nutrient content claims. And so that can be on the front of package, where the product is simply just describing the amount of nutrient in a food. For example, excellent source of vitamin D, good source of vitamin C, no sugar added, reduced fat. Those are nutrient content claims that are regulated by the FDA, so they have to meet certain definitions in order to put that nutrient content claim. So for example, if something is reduced fat, it actually has to be 25% less fat than the original version of that product to be an excellent source of whatever nutrient. There are certain criteria about how much it needs to contribute to the diet. And that value, no sugar added, should mean no sugar added. And so those nutrient content claims are regulated and have specific definitions behind them. Another example that's going to pull up is a health claim. And that is when they're making a claim between a relationship between a disease and a nutrient, food, or food constituent. This is very closely regulated by the FDA. And a lot of work goes into creating these health claims. Required lots of research. It required petitions to the FDA to look at that research and evaluate the strength of that research to determine whether this health claim could be made. So there are very few FDA approved health claims. I'll provide one example that you might be familiar with. Okay, Cheerios. Okay, good old fashioned Cheerios here. So you look at this label, it's saying lowering your cholesterol. Look at the back label, got a little asterisk here. 3 grams of soluble fiber daily from whole grain oat foods like Cheerios in a diet low in saturated fat and cholesterol can reduce the risk of heart disease. And then it says how much soluble fiber Cheerios actually have. So that is an example that of this health claim. It's not Cheerios being some magical food that lowers cholesterol. It's the action of soluble fiber, and that Cheerios have enough soluble fiber and other nutrition content actually criteria it has to meet in order to put that health claim. And even with that health claim put on there, there's an asterisk that has to detail what that actually means. So you don't really see a whole lot of this because there are so few health claims that are FDA approved, and there's a lot of extra information that has to be added on the package. But one you might see a little more often is called a structure function claim. And that's where on the label, they're just saying that a particular nutrient has a particular function in the body, and that food has that nutrient. So for example, a product that has added calcium might say calcium builds strong bones. Or if it has fiber, fiber promotes or maintains bowel regularity. So they can't say that calcium prevents osteoporosis, just saying calcium builds strong bones. We're like, oh, this product has calcium. I need strong bones. I'll have this product. So it's describing the role of a nutrient or ingredient on the structure or function of the human body. You might see this on foods or oftentimes on dietary supplements as well. But this is something regulated by the FDA. And if companies are kind of overstepping their bounds about what they're claiming that nutrient does, they might get after them with some regulations. Okay, so the nutrition facts panel and those examples of the health claims, nutrient content claims, and structure function claims are regulated by the FDA. Okay, well, if that was simply the only information we had to see on the label, now there are so many other marketing terms now added on that front of package that can be a little confusing. And I wanted to help you understand which ones are regulated and which ones are not right now, and what do they really mean. One that is gaining a lot of popularity in marketing is natural, and the term all natural. All natural is not regulated by the FDA. There is no definition for natural. There is some discussion about potentially regulating that, but for now it's not used on there. So you might see natural on things like Cheerios. Okay, yeah, sure, they're made from maybe naturally derived, no synthetic colors or preservatives, but would you really consider Cheetos a natural product? Okay, so right now that is not well regulated. It's not regulated at all. And having the term natural does not mean that product is healthier than a non-natural thing listed on the label. The term all natural is regulated by the USDA for meats. But with that, there is a definition, and that on the product, they have to list, well, what does that statement mean? So for example, saying there's no artificial ingredients or it's minimally processed. So the USDA does have a definition for natural for meat products, but the FDA does not regulate the term natural on other food products. Natural does not mean organic. Okay, organic is a regulated term, and that is regulated by the USDA. For something to have that organic label on there, it has to have 95% or more of the ingredients being organic. And in organic manufacturing and growing of a food, no synthetic pesticides are allowed, or antibiotics, fertilizers, hormones, sewage, sludge, can't be genetically engineered, and no use of irradiation. But in organic farming, they still do allow organic pesticides and fungicides. So organic does not mean pesticide free. And also in understanding that definition of organic does not mean it's inherently healthier. Okay, organic is a way that a product is grown and processed. Does not have anything to do with the nutrition content of the food. Okay. Some other misleading labels is things like hormone-free, because any animal product is going to contain naturally occurring hormones. Just like humans, animals produce hormones. So hormone-free in an animal product is misleading. Also, no artificial or added hormones are allowed in any pork and poultry. So if you see hormone-free on a package of chicken breasts, well, that's not allowed to be added anyway in any pork or poultry. Antibiotic-free, and all meat should be free of antibiotic residues. That is a regulation by USDA in our meat products. Also, some people think that brown eggs are better than white eggs. Brown eggs are not nutritionally different. The color of the outside of the egg is based on the breed. Another really common one now in lunch meats and things like bacon are the term nitrite free, when it really is not nitrite free. In nitrite free, they are using celery. Celery has a very high concentration of natural nitrate. So they treat celery juice with a bacterial culture to produce nitrite. So they're actually adding nitrites in nitrite-free product, but it's coming from celery. And the term so does not mean that there are no nitrites in nitrite-free. They're just using nitrites from celery. So that's often seen in lunch meat and things like bacon. So like, oh my gosh, like I feel like sometimes I'm telling people like, yeah, they're kind of lying to you, or they're really trying to deceive you. And it's really unfortunate because it makes it really confusing and for a consumer about what am I purchasing? And there's like fear mongering in this too. I hear a lot of concerns about food additives and trying to avoid all food additives. Well, food additives are why we're allowed to have packaged and processed foods so easily available with long shelf lives. And they can preserve and flavor foods, improve freshness and safety. They can function as antimicrobials, antifungals, so that our food is not spoiling. And especially things that are made from fresh products like produce, those things are go bad quickly. I mean, you can see like how a banana will rot on your counter in like 3 days. And so we need to have things, if it's going to have a shelf life and sit out at room temperature, that food additives can help preserve the shelf life. Sometimes food additives can help maintain nutritional value, keeping things from going rancid or oxidizing and breaking down a particular nutrient, contributing to texture and flavor. So food additives are not all bad, and they're often used in such small amounts that they're really not impacting our health in a significant way. I think people then start worrying about, well, then I don't want synthetic, no chemicals, or only natural. Well, natural just means that it was an ingredient that was created from anything that could be eaten, like animals or a vegetable. But to get that particular chemical out, either that flavor or preservative, it has to be processed in a lab. So natural and synthetic just means, synthetic was created, those chemicals. Natural means they had to extract that chemical from a natural thing, either a plant or an animal product. So it's the same chemical composition, just a different source. Okay, so natural is a natural ingredient, still a chemical. Artificial and synthetic, same chemical composition, just made differently. And remembering that everything is made up of chemicals. You and I are made up of chemicals. I have seen on the label chemical free, like, oh, what the heck is that thing anyway? Because we're all made up of chemicals. And also the advice that just because if you can't pronounce it, don't eat it. It means it's dangerous. The chemical names for many vitamins and minerals is quite a mouthful, and I would not consider them dangerous. They're things we absolutely need in our diet. For example, tocopherol is vitamin E, and that functions as an antioxidant in some processed foods. Citric acid, the term acid might seem scary. Well, that's actually naturally found in citrus fruits, and that provides that tangy, sour flavor. Or carrageenan, that's that thickener from seaweed. That's commonly found in like toothpaste, actually, but also ice cream and other sauces. I'm going to share my screen here again to show the ingredients list for an all-natural egg. Kind of read over that. Like, good luck pronouncing about 90% of these things, or even more of these things on the label. So even an all-natural egg made up of a bunch of chemicals. There are toxins in our produce. For example, apple seeds contain amygdalin, which can be converted to cyanide. Yeah, that's lethal. Formaldehyde in pears. Just some examples that these are natural chemicals. They're natural and they're toxic to humans, but they're present in very small amounts and far below a harmful dose. So just because something is natural doesn't mean it is not toxic. What we're concerned about is how much we're consuming. So don't get caught up in the term of natural or synthetic and assuming that just because something is natural, it is healthier. Okay. I wanted to bring up some few examples of how looking at that nutrition facts panel is going to provide much more information than that front of package, and how that front of package can make it seem like it is a healthier product, but nutrition facts panel will tell the truth. Okay, so back to this cereal. This is, I'm not trying to call out any companies here. Like, these are all things I've purchased that I eat when I use them as examples. No artificial flavors, no synthetic colors, made with real honey. Well, look at that nutrition facts panel. And what I see is it has 14 grams of added sugar as 28% of the daily value. This is really high in added sugar. And when I go to the ingredients list, yeah, the first ingredient, remember listed by weight, is whole grain wheat, but the second ingredient is sugar. So all of this with the natural colors and no artificial, no synthetic. That does not mean this product is healthier. It is very high in added sugar. Next ingredients are actually some more sugar. It's molasses, fructose, that's another version. It has honey as well. So it's like 4 different sources of sugar in this product. Okay. Another example is, I know protein is one that's getting a lot of marketing behind it. Like adding protein or adding fiber to things that don't naturally have that. So this is a snack bar marketed as being high in protein, and it says 12 grams of protein right at the front of the label. So really trying to sell you on the protein content. Non-GMO, gluten-free. We're smart now, right? We're gonna look at this label here. Well, I look at the label, it has 15 grams of added sugar and 12 grams of protein. So it has more sugar than it has protein in this bar. And looking at the ingredients list, the first ingredient by weight is soy protein isolate, but then the next is cane syrup, and then the next is cane sugar. So after the protein, it's sugar, and this actually has more sugar than protein. It's marketed as a protein bar, not a sugar bar. Also, and I referenced this a little earlier about like these vegetable chips or vegetable snacks, and they even have them like the color of vegetables. I really like the taste of these, but these are chips made from beans, and they're marketing that they have 4 grams of fiber per serving, 4 grams of protein per serving. Even the name is about beans. Well, if I compare them to a regular tortilla chip, they have very similar amounts of calories, fat. This actually has more sodium. This only has a couple more grams of fiber and a couple more grams of protein than the regular tortilla chips. This is about half the size and double the price as the regular tortilla chips. But you might think this is healthier because it's made from beans. That's why looking at that nutrition facts panel is so important. Just because it has, a food that seems healthy, like beans are healthy, but then they turned it into a chip, the nutrition content is not the same as beans. The nutrition content actually looks much more similar to a tortilla chip. And things like natural or putting the nutrient content in front of package are ways to help grab your attention so that you can purchase their product over another. And they're not going to have the nutrition facts panels facing you at the grocery store. And that's a lot of information, a lot of numbers, a lot of words on that ingredient list. But that is really where that information is. And When you have that information, you are a more informed consumer and you can make the right food choices for you. So knowing the nutrition facts over the nutrition marketing. So I hope you found this information helpful. There's so much more I could get into, but really tried to crash course it today. If you'd like to learn more information, you can follow me at Z Nutrition on Instagram. And I also have another account called Cancer Nutrition HQ on Instagram as well. So let me know what information might be more helpful for you in the future. Thank you for joining.